In late June, a skull spider made her home in a corner of the living room, up where the chimney breast meets the ceiling. She hung upside down on her invisible web, a dark silhouette against the white stippled ceiling, which must have been akin to a rocky lunar landscape for her. I knew she was a she because of the tiny grey cloud she clutched in her mouthparts. An egg sac. What is a skull spider, you might wonder? Well, I bet you've seen them plenty of times. Light brown, near translucent, with a long cylindrical abdomen that puts me in mind of a hand grip of an old-style revolver, the type you see in westerns. Their legs, thread fine and dainty, and many times the length of their bodies. I imagine them breaking like glass if you touch them. If you look closely, which I imagine not many people do, you'll see 3 black groups of eyes. The one in the centre is smaller, so that overall you get the impression of eye sockets and nasal cavities, hence the skull reference. Some call them daddy long-leg spiders, as they look a bit similar to the fly that bears that name. But I think that makes them sound a bit too comical. They're also known as cellar spiders because that's where they often choose to live, but I prefer skull spider. They might look delicate, but they can snare and kill their larger cousins with ease. A week later, another appeared. A little smaller, it perched a few centimetres away from her. This was a male, I sensed, and it was clear what he was after. But I'll get to that in a minute. I decided to name the pair of would-be lovers. He would be Peter, named after Peter Parker, the alter ego of Spider-Man, the superhero, while she would take her name from Gwen Stacy, his first girlfriend. In these days of home working, what a welcome distraction they were from their laptop and its constant stream of emails, its chiming reminders of unwritten minutes for overlong meetings and problem after problem after problem to unpick. The 2 arachnids reminded me to look up. Until Peter's appearance, Gwen hadn't moved much. Made me wonder how long it had been since she'd last eaten, but I recalled having once read that they can go weeks without food. I suppose part of being a spider entails not knowing where your next meal is coming from. After all, you can pitch up anywhere in a house and wait for prey to blunder into your web, but you're completely at the mercy of whether there is any in the house in the first place. There must be a lot of waiting when you're a spider. They must either be bored senseless or wired 24/7 with the anticipation of it all. I wonder if spiders can experience those emotions. Given that their basic brains must be smaller than a grain of sand, I'm guessing not. And again, who knows? A spider may well accuse me of human arrogance. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. From time to time, I'd look up to find that Gwen had shifted position or was facing in a different direction, but other than that, she stayed pretty much in the same spot. I tried to remember to look as often as I could, because I knew what was coming and I didn't want to miss it. I knew because I'd seen it once before. Before long, Peter extended one of his spindly front legs and started making stroking motions towards her. This carried on for a while, and it got Gwen's attention because she inched closer. I must admit, I did find myself thinking that at least he could have waited until her children had flown the nest, so to speak. Would she surrender to his charms, I wondered, or would she send him packing? It was over half an hour before I checked on the lady spider and her would-be suitor again, and blow me down, she dumped her egg sac and was entangled in a passionate embrace with him, joined at their undersides, legs criss-cross like vines. It was hard to make out where one ended and the other began. So those cautious caresses had worked their magic after all. Gwen and Peter were locked together for at least an hour. Once the deed was done, she must have broken contact and returned to her children-to-be, because Peter had skulked away and was loitering close by. 4 days later, on the 1st of July, it started. The prodding and picking and breaking apart of the egg sac. Every now and again she'd take a break to fiddle with a different part of the web, testing to make sure it was safe and secure perhaps. And soon a constellation of minuscule brown specks and straggly bits of spider silk fanned out around Gwen. At a guess, I would say there were about 20 spiderlings, but it could have been more. Spiderlings. Sounds alien, doesn't it? And they look it too. Out came the folding steps so I could get a closer look, and if I peered hard enough, I could just make out their minuscule stubs of their legs. I wonder if they were aware of me. Over the next day, Gwen's one-time lover kept trying to snare her attention again with his leg-stroking technique, but it had clearly lost its appeal, or he'd outlived his usefulness. Each inquisitive approach was met with a parry, a counter-move that said in no uncertain terms, "Leave me and my babies alone." They were her priority, and she was their superhero. Eventually Peter gave up and slunk off. He did make one last brief appearance, maybe hoping that she might have changed her mind in the intervening hour, but alas, it was not to be. Over the next few days, I watched the spiderlings grow into miniature versions of their mother. Upside down, multiple legs bent, they were like tiny, perfect umbrella frames. I never saw them move, but almost a week to the day, I glanced up at that corner by the chimney breast to find that most had disappeared. There was no sign of Gwen either. Only one straggler remained, not yet ready to face the big bad world alone. Out of the blue, she came back. Was she checking on it? Offering a last nudge of encouragement? If she was, then it worked, because she and the straggler were gone for good by the next day. After her recent liaison with Peter, she would no doubt repeat the whole process in another quiet corner of the house. I was grateful to Gwen and her children and to Peter for the added interest they brought to each day. It reminded me to pay attention to what's going on around me, however small. I can't help but wonder though, where did all those spiderlings get to? Who knows? Maybe I'll see some of them again one day.